Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Emerald Planet. All the ecology news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's your host, Executive Director of the Emerald Planet, Dr. Sam Lee Hancock.
Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. and the United States as we look around the globe to find those 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And as we move to 2050 and we have about 9 billion people on the planet, how are we going to be able to take care of them so that they actually have an increased standard of living and not just exist? And we have a gentleman that's going to be coming on with us today. This is Warren Kelm. He's the principal of Classic Global Energy, LLC, and what's called the Safe Life Stoves. He's coming in by Skype. And then right beside me is our good friend who actually shows up quite a bit on Emerald Planet TV. This is Richard W. Lewis. He's the president of the Winfield Group and the technology marketing officer for Augur Marketing, and he's here, right here beside me. And
thank you.
Thank you for being back with us. And Warren, I think you're here already, correct?
I'm here.
Glad to have you, and
my pleasure.
Welcome to the Emerald Planet TV. And it's really exciting the work you're doing as far as the Safe Life Stove. I think this is really a great name for this. And as I started really doing the research, there's so many potential for this, and at the same time, it's the opportunity to really change people's lives at their own homes. So tell us a little bit about the Classic Global Energy, LLC, and also the Safe Life Stoves.
Okay, Classic Global is a Florida-based company, and I work with an engineer down there to actually do the designs, and then we did testing of the stoves. And the concept of the stove came from a need to cook food and sterilize the drinking water in the areas where there are natural disasters and poverty. So he and I met with several people knowledgeable in this field, and we did some research on what might be feasible for fuels, and that included waste wood products, dead and diseased trees, construction debris, and the list goes on. So my company took on the design part of this equipment used to not only dry materials like wood and coal. We also worked with 2 companies to briquette coal fines, and that was a learning experience. So it was a natural step for us to look at a system to take wood chips, sawdust, and debris and turn them into a usable fuel source.
I think it's really a great idea, and having lived, worked, and traveled in 91 different countries, there's just wood waste everywhere. You can be even in countries where you don't see very many trees at all, but there's always a lot of wood because of the international import-export as far as pallets are concerned, furniture, and all these things. And there's just really a lot of that wood out there. Tell us a little bit about what the market is for your Safe Life Stoves. And I know that you've been looking at a number of different areas like the Native American nations within the United States, rural areas, but a lot for overseas use.
Yeah, we've actually contacted people over in South Africa, and I worked with some companies that out of Australia that do some of this type of research work and marketing. And we found the market was everywhere, not just for natural disasters, but also for camping, outdoor use. That's basically where we see this market coming around. The availability of the products to make it into wood pellets is tremendous. So it's kind of a gain from both sides.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it too is that if you're using all this, what we now call repurposing, there's no longer trash anymore because everything has a useful area to go into as a second, third, or fourth life. But if you can do that, then it removes the contamination of water and soil, particularly within localities, but it's taking something that really does look as a waste and turn it into something very valuable which is fuel for food, as you called, sterilization of water, also, but lighting within these homes, and also removes that harsh particulate matter, which is escapes, because a lot of these homes are actually doing open hearth burning. So when you go in there, you can't hardly even see the person across the hearth from you because there's just so much smoke, and it just, oh, it's terrible. So been there, done that. And then also removing the greenhouse gas emissions going into those communities. But it sounds like we've got a really good connection with you, Warren. And Rich, why don't you ask the next question?
Sure. Hi, Warren. Tell us about the actual Safe Life stove and how it is a revolutionary technology to replace the antiquated wood-burning stoves, hearths, or open floor burning of wood across the planet.
Well, first of all, the stove is small and it's relatively lightweight. It's made of thin stainless steel sheet, and it can burn wood pellets, wood chips, small coal pellets, a variety of different fuels. The really great thing is that the burn of the pellets is controlled, and it only uses a few ounces of wood and not pounds of wood or coal to cook a meal. Because the burn is controlled, there are no particulate pieces escaping, and the unburned wood fumes are all but eliminated just due to the consistency of the actual burn.
Well, looking at this image here, tell us a little about this. This is actually, I think, some of the people at your factory standing around this. I mean, this looks like you're looking into molten lava in here. So this burns really hot, but you said there's actually no heat that escapes, and so you can touch it, and the stove is still cool to touch, correct?
That's correct. By making it out of stainless steel, the stainless steel itself acts as an insulator, and there's actually 3 round walls of stainless used in the manufacture of the stove, so the amount of heat escaping is actually quite small. It's actually directed vertically up to the surface where you can do the cooking and water heating.
Yeah, and I'm going to back up on this. So this shows the interior part of that. But looking at the top of this really is very convenient. So people within their homes and or if they're using it on their farm, say to purify water for the chickens or rabbits or what have you, which in some places they do that, is that you could actually put a very large vessel on there and actually boil the water to do the purification. And I guess it doesn't take that long, correct?
That's correct. There's a tremendous amount of heat that comes just straight up out of the burned area. And the inside, that's where you can see that kind of a yellow, red, hot area. It's extremely warm. And it acts just like a stove. I mean, a typical stove. So if you put a pot of water on in a few minutes, it'll have it boiling.
Yeah, and looking at this is a very simple construction. You've taken one of these apart for us so we could actually see the interior of this. And it almost looks like it creates a vortex in there. But how does it get so hot? Because that's something, and also in your literature, you're saying you're consuming 100% virtually of whatever fuel that goes into this. And of course, we're really looking at it from wood pellets because that's very abundant in many countries.
What we experimented with was the amount of wood chips or wood pellets you put in the very bottom, and then how to control the air that the wood needs to burn. Mm-hmm. If there's no air, then it doesn't burn well, and it creates bad gases, CO and things like that. Especially the volatile matter won't burn, and that escapes out in the atmosphere, making smoke. So by experimenting with the size and the amount of holes that allow the air to come in, plus adding air just above where the coal burns, that additional air or excess air allows all of the volatile matter to burn in that point, and the wood fumes are completely eliminated, and the efficiency is great.
Yeah, and one of the aspects we worked on waste energy systems, and that was what was called a starved hearth system. So you actually were under oxygenating everything in there. what you're doing is you're actually taking whatever the waste is and even the vapors and using that as a fuel. So you really have secondary and third tertiary fuel being made out of the wood chips or whatever else that you may be using in this system.
That's correct.
Yeah, this is actually a very brilliant idea. Now look, we're looking at what we're calling the chips or the pellets. Tell us about how this is actually made. We're going to get into that technology later, but this, I would assume, is made out of some kind of scrap wood, or what would you make this out of?
It can be made out of almost any type of a scrap wood or construction debris. We actually took that material and ran it through a small grinder system to make basically a sawdust or slightly larger than sawdust size material. Dried it, and then you can either extrude it, or I prefer to use briquetters and make little pellets because the briquetter will generally make more production than some of the extruding systems, so you have a better bang for the buck. And basically, those little pellets require almost no type of a binder agent or anything else because there's still some sap left to hold the pellets together.
Yeah, I'm just going back between these two. So here you have the pellets, and you're getting ready to put it into the stove itself. And then once you light this is the intensity of the heat there. This is just amazing. But looking at what are the economic benefits of having these stoves, Warren, and we have about a minute and a half left.
Well, basically, we're going to create a lot of jobs because the stove is, number one, it's easy to manufacture. It just requires some stainless steel sheets that can be cut and punched or bent. And with a little bit of assembly work, the stove is completed. So training's not a major issue, and the equipment required to manufacture the stoves is actually readily available from sources all around the world.
So what you're looking to do is actually produce these in country then?
We can make them, yeah, near whatever locations show a demand for the stoves, and or ship them on pallets or in boxes and go normal transportation to distributors.
Yeah, and the question that Rich was going to ask you, but we ran out of time, was about greenhouse gas emissions, and I think you've already explained that. It takes care of it because it's just consuming everything that's generated in there. Is that correct?
That's correct, and it makes a constant, consistent burn.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love what you're doing. This is
Thank you, sir.
Warren Kelm. He's the principal of Classic Global Energy, LLC, and Safe Life Stoves, coming in by Skype. This is Richard W. Lewis sitting right beside me. Thank you for being with us as we look around the globe to create the Emerald Planet.
Strawberries? Okay.
Okay, so what would you bring to my company?
What do you need?
I need problem-solving skills.
I got through high school without a car, a phone, or a computer.
No college degree, though.
Not yet, but life's taught me a lot, and I'm ready for more.
Well, you're not the typical kind of candidate that I hire. But you are exactly what I'm looking for.
Your company could be missing out on the candidates it needs most. Learn how to find a great pool of untapped talent at gradsoflife.org.
They'll test you. Try to break your will. But however loud the loudness gets, however many cheese puffs may fly, you're the driver, the one in control. Stand firm. Just wait. and move only when you hear the click that says they're buckled in for the drive. Never give up till they buckle up.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technologies, services, products, and the people, of course, are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And as we go to a planet that will have about 9 billion people by 2050 and maybe 12 to 13 billion by the end of the century, how are we going to provide the food, the fuel, the fiber, all the basic infrastructure that is needed by everyone so they have an increased quality of life and not just exist on planet Earth? And we have a gentleman that actually is working in many of these different areas. He's coming by Skype out of the great state of Ohio. This is Warren Kelm. He's principal of the Classic Global Energy, LLC, and Safe Life Stoves. And then right beside me is a good friend of ours that comes to Emerald Planet quite frequently now. This is Richard W. Lewis. He's the president of the Winfield Group and the technology marketing officer for Augur Marketing. And Warren, I think you're already here by Skype. Welcome.
Hey, thank you, sir. I am here.
Yeah, glad to have you. For the audience's sake, tell us a little bit about this Safe Life stove, and then we want to get into the meaning of this term that I'd never even seen this before till we started preparing for this program, carbonizer systems. What is a carbonizing system? So let's go over the stove first as a little refresher, and then how we're getting into, and we're going to talk about the fuel that's being produced to be able to be used in these stoves, which is very energy efficient and removes waste out of communities. But go ahead, sir.
Okay. The Safe Life stove is a stainless steel stove that's designed to burn wood chips, wood pellets, and basically any biomass fuels. The main purpose of the stove is to provide a cooking source and water sterilization source for people in the outlying areas or areas hit by severe storms or natural disasters. The stoves can also use a temperature differential to produce low voltage electricity. By using stainless steel, the stoves can be operated for a very long period of time without them rusting out or failing due to heat or bending or burning through. The term carbonizer describes a method that we had worked on which supplies an indirect heat source against the wood, and it actually drives the moisture off. It keeps the volatile matter intact along with the carbon in the material to begin with. So we can take that dried material and put it right through a briquetter and make pellets to burn in the Safe Life stove.
I tell you, I think it's absolutely fantastic. Well, why is it so environmentally friendly to actually use the wood materials? And we're going to talk about repurpose is the term now. They no longer have waste anymore because everything is so precious. But also you can use sawdust, various biomass, woody matter, and also with the climate change, there's so many dead and diseased trees all over the planet that now they have to convert those into something, or you're going to have infestations that will kill off other live growths. But tell us a little bit about taking that, we'll use the term waste, but repurposed materials, and turning it into something very useful.
All right, these are all this wood is a great source for supply of the briquettes. And, you know, we can take construction debris and demolition that's normally going to landfills and convert it into briquettes. And, you know, obviously that type of material has high amounts of wood in it. And some of it's already kiln dried, like 2x4s and plywood. So other sources that we can use is like wood from natural disasters of tornadoes and hurricanes, which normally would be sawed up and hauled off to a landfill. And then in a typical forest, as you mentioned, there are dead trees all around where that type of material, you know, Mother Nature's already killed it off, and we can take and dry it out and make a great fuel.
Well, the thing too is wildfires are happening all across the earth. So you go into Siberia, you go into Central Australia, even in the Amazonia now, as far as Brazil is concerned, or in the Pampas of Argentina. I mean, there's so many places on the earth that actually, because of increased heat, lack of water coming in through the monsoons, there's more and more forest fires. And so there's a lot of dead trees that really need to be converted very quickly, or they become infested with various insects and other things that are going to attack the live tree. So what you're doing is really a great idea, to take something that really can be harmful to the planet and turn it into something very useful. Rich, why don't you ask the next question, sir?
Sure. What are the types of equipment, small or large, which can be used to convert local repurposed scrap wood biomass along with dead or diseased trees to provide an alternative fuel sources to at-risk or marginalized citizens and communities needing environmentally friendly off-grid energy sources?
Okay, the first issue we get into with this type of fuel from dead trees or diseased trees, or really even from landfill operations, is there's moisture in this wood, and that's a problem for any stove, let alone trying to light a campfire. So we basically worked on a project to dry wood indirectly, and we were very successful. We can drive the moisture from 45 or 50% down to as low as 3 to 5%.
That's incredible.
Yes, and it was a rotary kiln design where it was using indirect heat, and we've tried this type of a system on many different products, including fatty nickel, where we drove the fat off and left the nickel compound as a reclaimed commodity. The next step you have to do is make this dried sawdust into a usable pellet. We've experimented with different size pellets and ended up with, most of the time, like a 3/8 inch diameter by 1 inch long pellet. And there are commercially available briquetters that can accomplish this. And we have some experience in actually briquetting wood and coal both. So they're manufactured by several companies here in the U.S. and overseas, and are available in many different tonnage ranges. So you can have them for a small community or a large community, depending on the amount of material that's available and the amount of people that need the stove.
Well, it's been estimated, this is through the United Nations, the World Bank, and many others, there's probably at least 2 billion people that either have very old, antiquated systems. Half of those probably are actually just burning open hearth right in the middle of the floor of their houses or their huts they're living in. And so when you look at that number of people that are involved in doing this, there's a real need out there. We kind of think about it, it's for camping and emergencies in the United States. But most of these 2 billion people are living around the globe, and they really have no alternative except just burning a lot of wood. Very expensive, and it takes a lot of disposable income. So is there adequate sources of wood and biomass out there that actually you can meet the needs of 2 billion people that need to be able to prepare food and to sterilize water, prepare food and other things for their animals that needs to be heated in certain ways? So what's available out there?
Well, the question is there enough of it? I believe there is. When you consider the amount of material that goes into landfills and what they call construction debris, it's on a daily basis, the amount is huge. Plus we have dead and dying trees, the debris from major storms, and things like leftover wood from new construction or the upgrading of homes and factories. So there should be plenty of material to work with.
Looking at this, I think this is called a kiln that's in this image here. Tell us a little bit about how this works and why is that so important to making the pellets or the briquettes?
Okay, that's called a rotary kiln, and it's an externally heated system. Instead of having a fire go through the center of the drum and directly heat material, it actually heats it by contact on the sides of the rotating drum. So basically all we're trying to do is heat the material up hot enough to drive moisture off without getting rid of the volatile matter in the wood or getting, even to turn it into carbon. We've lost heat if we've turned it into carbon.
Well, here are some of these pellets that you're talking about, and going out of that kiln, then is there another step in that process that then you have these pellets?
Yes, once it comes out of the kiln, it's dried, so it's a burnable product, but it's not in a specific size or a range that's usable. So we feed that material into a briquetter, which uses a tremendous amount of force to actually make little compressed pellets that once they're in that compressed state, they can be used in any stove that we'd manufacture.
Yeah, and these actually very simple looking machines. This is the design of one of those. Rich, I think you have the next question.
Sure. Warren, what are the opportunities for creating new green businesses overseas and providing the equipment, spare parts, aftermarket services, and financing for wood biomass pellets production and sales?
Okay, we think potential sales in the recreational area and increased use for natural disasters, and with a little help from advertising, potential is basically huge worldwide. I mean, these type of conditions exist everywhere. So literally, there's a potential of thousands of jobs that could be created. Government support for the disaster relief programs would only add to the jobs and help create a steady market for the stoves and the equipment to produce the pellets. The job creation would continue just because there's always disasters and campers.
Yeah, what do you see for the growth of use of the stoves, but also making this woody material, say, over the next 5, 10, or 15 years?
Well, basically, you've got a market that's been untouched. There are stoves out on the market and things like that, but nothing quite like this. So every time we sell a stove or enter into a new market, the potential for jobs and new ones and lasting jobs is just tremendous. They're usually manufacturing jobs, so they'll be a top tier in pay and obviously long term. And you look at additional jobs in packaging, transportation, sales, and service, all of these would be great additions to local economies.
That's fantastic. And of course, that would be worldwide too. This is Warren Kelm. He's the principal of Classic Global Energy and Safe Life Stoves. Richard Lewis is sitting right beside me from Augur Marketing. And thank you for being with us as we create the Emerald Planet.
One day these rats were playing in the wood. Well, it's some matches and that's no good. Yeah. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about rooftop life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Yeah.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Why don't you just wash your car at home? When I wash my car, everything runs down the street and down into the storm drains. With all the chemicals in the soaps and waxes, the last thing I want to do is poison my own drinking water. At least here, it's all contained and recycled on site. That's why I also take my car in for oil changes instead of doing it myself. I might take a chance on spilling stuff. You know what the best part is? What? More time to kick back and watch the game.
How far would you go to protect the planet?
I want you to build an ark.
Here we go. Okay, that's good. Oh, okay. Ow!
Maybe there's another way.
People, the flood is imminent!
Is it too much to ask for a little precipitation?
Go to fightglobalwarming.com to find out what you and your community can do to reduce global warming pollution.
Somewhere around the world, there are men and women of the armed forces risking their lives, helping rebuild communities after natural disasters. collecting toys for needy children, tutoring kids in school. These are your sons and daughters who work to keep us safe, secure, and free. Dedicated men and women who put their country first.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, and welcome to the Emerald Planet as we come to you on a week-to-week basis out of Washington, D.C. in the United States, looking around the globe in 144 different nations. And what we're looking for in these countries are what we call the best of the best practices that are very practical. They're solving local needs, local issues. At the same time, they're low cost and would be available to the majority of the people that live either in these local communities or in the nations themselves. There's no reason to have technologies that are so expensive that very few people can actually use these. And someone's coming on in a very traditional industry in the United States. This is Rachael Cox. She's Vice President of Business Development for Bison Pumps. And you're going to be amazed at these pumps. These are all hand pumps. And I think these are just absolutely fantastic for the international marketplace and also many uses within the United States. And then we have our special guest, Richard W. Lewis, President of the Winfield Group and the Technology Marketing Officer for Augur Marketing.
Hello.
And Rachael, welcome to the Emerald Planet TV.
Hi, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and I have to say on air for full disclosure, you're a Rotarian, and we met at the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., and you're
right.
welcome to come back to our Rotary meetings anytime you're in Washington, D.C., so it was great meeting you there.
Thank you.
It's a great place to meet and greet. Tell us a little bit about these Bison pumps. And I preference this about the hand nature of this. I think this is just something is amazing because we went everything mechanical, you know, in the Western world, the United States. Now we're going back to these more traditional technologies, and here you are inventing new styles and new types of equipment. Tell us a little bit about Bison pumps and then its vision and its mission.
That's right. So Bison Pumps manufactures stainless steel hand pumps. Specifically used in groundwater wells, and this is a very old technology. And it's funny because a lot of times people will ask, "Are you guys going to patent this?" And you know, there's not really anything to patent. It's technology that's been around for hundreds of years. But we have definitely improved upon it, and our product is something unique.
Well, looking at this, the bison comes right across in your logo, and of course people identify, I guess the bison is probably outside of the eagle the most identified animal in the United States, and so this is very well done on these pumps. Also, they're very tough. But as a woman in a very non-traditional enterprise, what attracted you to this very classical type of business? And it's, you know, heavy manufacturing, assembly, and then of course you've got to go out and sell these, and something that people are just now rediscovering in the marketplace. So it's just like, you're almost like a pioneer going back 100, 150 years and all of this, but yet it's very 21st century.
That's very true. Preparedness has become very popular in the past several years, and so that's something that we have been able to really tap into that market. But the thing that attracted me, I guess, is just, well, let me give a little bit of background on myself and my experiences. I come from a family of entrepreneurs, grew up watching my parents run a manufacturing company. So manufacturing is definitely in my blood. It's not something that scares me, especially as a woman, and I'm used to being the only woman in the room. That's nothing that is going to surprise me there. So that doesn't scare me off, and it shouldn't scare off any woman because, you know, getting your hands dirty, that shouldn't scare anybody. So the attraction to Bison Pumps specifically was the synergy that we had with our current manufacturing company. We were able to create these parts here in the U.S. We're headquartered in Arkansas, and so we were able to move the facilities there. And the great thing about Bison is that it's benefiting people, and it's a result that you can see very clearly. You don't have to wonder, you know, is there a huge markup at the end, or do these parts that I'm making, do they benefit anybody? You know that they do. You're providing water, which is the most precious resource in the world, and you're guaranteeing that source, whether it's to somebody in the U.S. or it's somebody in another country like Mexico, India, Africa, someplace like that.
Yeah, looking at this site right here, this looks like it may be in Africa, somewhere like that, but you know, there's almost a billion people now that either have access to very low quality or actually dangerous water, or they have no water. So the fact that you have these hand pumps is just absolutely incredible, what it is that you're doing. And I'm going to put this up here, but Rich, I think you have the next question.
I do have a question for you. This is a two-part question. Is it difficult manufacturing in the United States, and what are some of the advantages of having a classical manufacturing business which is expanding its sales around the globe, headquartered in the U.S.?
It is a little bit difficult manufacturing in the United States, just because you know, our price point, it's difficult to be competitive with places like Mexico and India. But probably our biggest challenge, though, is the lack of skilled labor. So it's very difficult to find people that want to enter the field of manufacturing. You'll find that most guys who are machinists have a lot of gray hair on their head, and they're headed towards retirement, and there's not a lot of young millennials coming up behind them. So that's probably our biggest challenge with manufacturing in the United States today, not to mention the fact that when they're coming out of the public schools, they're not really prepared to go to work yet. So I think there's a lot of improvement that can be done, and the National Association for Manufacturing is doing a lot of work towards that. Here in my home state of Arkansas, we've implemented a lot of skilled workers programs and things like that to kind of move that along. But it's going to take a generation or so to see the fruits of that. So in the meantime, you know, it's kind of hard to get by as far as the labor force.
Now, looking at the pump that we have here in this slide, it looks like they're installing this, and this really goes to the next question about as far as the marketplace. I know that you're doing a lot of export, so something that was very classical tradition to be in the United States, you're now going into the international market. So exporting these, is it difficult to provide the parts and have people to be able to use this? Or is this something that they know traditionally and it's been there, you're just providing a new and improved version of something that they may have used in the past? Right.
It's not difficult to actually get the pump there or to exchange the money. The actual transaction technology has really smoothed those things out for us. What's difficult is the culture, and that's where having a local distributor is really key. Someone who can tell you, this is an area where they really need it. This is a place where we can make a big impact. And to be on the ground and to be able to explain to those folks exactly how it works and how it's going to benefit them and what the value is, and being able to literally speak the language and to understand how the village and how the community works. And so that's very important, especially when you're going into less industrialized countries. You know,
situational awareness and also the local culture, and we're looking like we're in front of a school, but actually it's amazing. I've been in 91 different countries now. When you go in a lot of these developing countries, you go to a government building, it may be a health clinic, could be a school, even a government office, and actually they're getting their water through a hand pump. It's either out back or right in front of what have you. So is it difficult to actually put these in? We're looking at this one right here in front of the school. Looks like a very nice installation. It's one of yours. Thank you. And at the same time, do you have professionals that you actually train in country, or is it something that the local community can be trained to put these in and then to maintain them? Because my understanding across the African continent, about 75% of the wells that are drilled within about 6 to 12 months, they're not functioning because no one knows how to take care of the equipment. But this looks very simple. So what's the process for that, and do you need professionals to do it?
You need a professional to drill the well, but you can install the pump yourself. So the setup there, that's in Singapore, but that's actually being used to pressurize a whole water tank that was going into a community building. So the fact that you gave there about 75% of those wells not working about a year later, that's very true, and that's a huge problem that NGOs and even governments see whenever they're drilling wells, and that's something that Bison has been working diligently to solve. We are constantly talking to NGOs and other nonprofits that are going and physically, installing the wells themselves and saying, what problems are you experiencing, and when you go back, are these people able to maintain it? And so getting their feedback, having them install our pumps, and then keep checking in with them and finding out how can we fix it, because a lot of the problems that we see from the pumps that are traditionally installed in Africa is that there are a lot of gaps, and so the kids will put like little sticks and pieces of trash and things like that in there, just how kids are, and it only takes a small little piece of plastic or something to get caught in the cylinder, and the pump is completely broken and they don't know how to fix it. So having a completely sealed off water is very important to prevent contamination and also to keep the pump working longer. So these are things that we're constantly working on, and we're trying to talk to people in the field and get their feedback.
Now, that's absolutely fantastic. Rich?
Hi, Rachel. I run a advertising agency and want to give you props for a great website. It's easy to use and very professional looking. How are the pumps sold, and do you use a website or dealers for domestic and international sales? And what about the spare parts?
Domestically, we can sell you the pump one of two ways. A lot of people, if they're drilling their well initially, they're already working with a well driller, and he can sell them the well. We partner with about, I think it's 3,000 well drillers across the United States, and they can get in touch with us and they can buy it and install it for you, and you don't have to touch it. But if you're more of a DIY person, which most of our customers are, you can contact us directly through the website. You can call us, you can email us, you can Facebook us. We're everywhere. So it's not hard to get in touch with us, and we really do like to talk with the folks and find out all of the details using it. Like that girl there is she just trying to fill up some buckets? Or are you trying to pressurize a water tank in your home and have the water running through your faucets? Because the pump, it can do a lot of things, and so if we know how you're using it, we can really customize it to your situation.
Fantastic. We're going to lose you in just a few seconds. This is Rachael Cox.
Okay.
She's the Vice President, Business Development, Bison Pumps. Our good friend Richard Lewis right beside us of Augur Marketing. Thank you for being with us as we're looking at this issue of water, 1 billion people without it, as we create the Emerald Planet.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
Hey, Hard, what's this? That's my resignation. You're resigning. Why? You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit. Oh, I forgot. I'll do better. Please don't quit on me.
Don't let your heart quit on you. Get your uncontrolled high blood pressure to a healthy range before it's too late.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bagging lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally. I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands? My son has lots of dolls.
But did you know terracloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that. Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the right seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
We're back to the Inside Scoop Emerald Planet. Here again, your host, Dr. Sam.
Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock, the Executive Director and President of EmeraldPlanet, EmeraldPlanet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States, America's capital, as we look around the globe at 1,000 best practices, technologies, services, and products that are making a difference as we go through the 21st century. And as we keep adding more people to the planet, and at the same time, people are afraid we're going to be running out of natural resources, how do we economize and protect what we have, actually expand the base as far as what we have for water specifically, but also the food, the fuel, the fiber that we need to provide the material comforts, and also is how we're going to bring about a better quality of life for everybody that's going to be joining us, because we're adding 2 billion people by 2050, and that's an incredible number. And Rachael Cox, who is the Vice President of Business Development for Bison Pumps, is coming in by Skype, and she's going to be talking about the billion people on the planet that do not have access to adequate water, in many cases no water whatsoever. And they have very unique products that we're going to be seeing here as far as hand pumps. And then Richard W. Lewis is sitting right beside me. Rich is a good friend of EmeraldPlanet. He's the president of the Winfield Group, technology marketing officer for Augur Marketing, and is a regular backup here on EmeraldPlanet TV. And welcome back, Rich. And Rachael, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
I think what you're doing is absolutely fantastic, and we met at the Rotary Club of Washington, D.C., and you started explaining about you were there for one of the international organizations that we actually work with and support. And I just think this work is incredible, and particularly you're doing things that's off-grid, which not only in developing world, but in the United States, people are right under the electrical power lines, and they're going off grid anyway, going with solar and wind and, of course, hand pumps. So tell us a little bit about the special skills and knowledge that you have as a female entrepreneur. I think this is part of your heritage with your family. And why a line of hand pumps, of all things, in the 21st century, and everything is going digital, the Internet of Things, big data mining, and you're doing hand pumps. Tell us about that and why they're so important in the 21st century.
Well, it's hard, especially in the U.S., but when you do get the chance to travel outside the U.S., you'll find out that our water infrastructure that we take for granted is not everywhere. A lot of people are having to deal with not having proper waste facilities, not having proper access to drinking water. These are serious issues, and they are right outside our doorstep. They're in Mexico, they're in Canada, Honduras, Guatemala. So there's plenty of places that are not nearly as advanced as we are, and so hand pumps are still extremely in demand. They are bringing safe access to drinking water. They're freeing up women their time to be able to back and forth from a dirty river. There's so many things. I recently went on a trade mission with the World Trade Center to Mumbai, and we were taken to a school where these women had been saved, basically, and they were getting properly educated. But water was one of the huge things that allowed them to become educated, because once they got out of the slums where there was open defecation, which led to sickness, which led to attacks. So, in the U.S., it's so hard to imagine that water can affect your life in that many ways, but it really does. It touches so many people in a lot of different assets of their life, and especially women. So hand pumps and women, you don't think about it initially, but it really goes hand in hand.
Well, the whole thing about it, too, it's really a social equity, it's a health issue. You just talk about open defecation. You go to some of the streams, rivers, ponds in many developing countries, people using it as a cesspool. They're washing their clothes, washing their dishes, and they're feeding and watering the animals right next to where they're taking a shower or a bath. So it's just hard to imagine this as far as most people in the United States or most developed countries. But what types of people abroad that are interested in the hand pumps? And then also we can lace that with the United States, because my understanding is that more and more people in the United States, even though they're totally on the grid, are actually going to hand pumps because of the outages and also the severity of these, what they call nature or natural events.
That's so true, and I think you especially have seen in the past several years, people are trying to become more and more self-sustainable, less relying on a grid that's ran by a government or water that's regulated by a government that maybe they can't trust. I mean, I think the Flint, Michigan water scandal there really scared a lot of folks. And so having groundwater wells in your own personal access to safe drinking water, where you're testing the water, you're making sure that it's clean and drinkable, that's something that's really appealing to people these days. There's a good amount of skepticism as far as how truthful our political leaders are anymore, and so that leads to people wanting to be a lot more self-sustaining. And not to mention, you brought up the Internet of Things. The more we rely on the internet, the more vulnerable we become in a lot of ways, because if you've ever been without power, maybe during a thunderstorm or something, you realize really quickly that you're stuck. You can't get anything done. And having access to water is one of the things that you can never be without. So if you are on well water and you've got an electric pump, you've got to have a hand pump backup. Sometimes the electricity does go out, even in the United States. And so it's not worth taking the risk, and it's a simple thing to install in your home, and it can bring so much peace of mind.
Yeah, I'm going to go back between these two. I don't know if you can see these, Rachel, but you have, going back to this one, this is a very sophisticated unit. I've seen this from a company out of Denmark, which is one of the largest pump manufacturers on the planet. But they're tying in electronics with hand pumps. Tell us a little bit about this, and then we have this one in the home that tell us about that one as well. Right. So I'll just go back to this one and let's move forward, because I think these are good examples of the sophistication but yet the simplicity that you have with Bison pumps.
Right. So this home is using a jet pump, and a lot of people will ask, well, I've already got a submersible, or I've got a jet pump or something like that already hooked up to my well. How am I going to use this? We can work with a pump already in the well, and basically what they've got happening there is a little L-shaped thing, and you see the wires coming up from the casing there, and it all connects. And so if the water goes out, all you've got to do is yeah, sorry, the picture's going everywhere. You see that red thing? That's actually tying off the water, so preventing it from coming out the spout. And so the water will pump actually up to the pump, and then it won't be able to come out, and so it'll go back out that way. And if you do need to switch to a hand pump, all you've got to do is switch a valve, and you can sit there and hand pump the water into your home. Yeah, there's a threaded hose bib on the end, and it will connect to your water tank. And well, they're not using it that way. Actually, the one in the basement, the other one, that's how they're using it. So.
Yeah, these are, it's amazing just how simple but how sophisticated all this is. It's just absolutely amazing to me. Rich?
Sure. What makes your product truly unique in the hand water pumps markets? And does your company work to constantly improve and design other types of hand water pumps based upon customer needs?
Well, the thing that really caught my eye at first about this company was just how beautiful it is, because it's a very elegant design. It's kind of nostalgic. It brings back good memories for a lot of people who had to pump water, especially here in Arkansas. You hear a lot of those stories in the South. So there's a beauty to it and an elegance. it's also made of stainless steel, and all of the inner parts, everything is NSFW approved. And so everything that's coming out of there is going to be clean. You don't have to worry about that. It goes through special inspections. Everything is made in the United States. It comes with a lifetime warranty. You can't find a beautiful, high-quality pump like this anywhere else on the market.
Yeah, this is just amazing. And as you said, this looks very elegant sitting here on the edge of the lawn with the forest.
Isn't that gorgeous?
It absolutely is. But how do you have the specific water pumps, and how do you design those for high volume? We've looked at houses here, and I think we had that one in Singapore where they're actually charging one of probably the rooftop storage tanks. But how do you actually take high volume? So let's say you are at an administrative building or a health clinic or a school in a developing country and be able to provide them with the amount of water that they do need.
Right. So basically what you want to do is increase the diameter of your cylinder. And also a way to cut cost is, instead of having a pipe that goes down into the water, using the actual casing as your pipe. So you're taking the whole body that you see there and expanding it. And the more that you do that, the higher volume of water you can get per stroke. And so that's going to mean less time sitting there pumping and also less wear on the pump. However, it takes a lot to wear these things out. They last 10 or 15 years before you're going to even need to replace a seal. So it's going to last a long time, especially if you're putting it in a community where they're going to be using it all day, every day. I believe one pump can serve about 50 people, and so that's 50 people filling up about 2, maybe 4 10-gallon buckets a day, and so we can handle that, and it's going to last a long time. And then again, like I said, it really depends a lot on what's happening on the ground. And so those local dealers, local distributors who are able to talk to the people and say, do you need this to pressurize a tank to get water into, to have running water? Or are you just filling up buckets for
Rachel,
cooking?
We're going to lose you in just a few seconds. What do you see for the growth and development of Bison pumps over the next 5, 10, 15 years? And you got about 10 seconds to do all that.
Okay, basically we're just going to continue to improve on the design. We're going to be pushing these hard and partnering with nonprofits and government contracts to get these to the people that need the water the most.
I think this is absolutely fantastic. This is Rachael Cox, Vice President of Business Development for Bison Pumps. She's coming out of Arkansas. Right beside me is Richard W. Lewis, President of the Winfield Group and Technology Marketing Officer, Augur Marketing. Rich, thank you again for being Rachel, thank you for being here. And to your viewers, thank you for being with us as we bring you another best practices as we create